to me right now at the ripe age of 32, I would say failure is staying in an environment that does not appreciate you and makes you feel like you are not good enough. That is my biggest failure. Staying too long in a place that kind of dimmed my light or kind of wanted to instill in me that you're not really going to go anywhere. We need to create this space for the founders and the teams to be able to have more exposure so that they become more confident. Because unfortunately, until now, when we're having a meeting with a company that's based somewhere in Europe or somewhere in the US for an introductory call, the confidence is just, you cannot compare. Yeah. And it's a pity because we have some very, very smart people here, like geniuses.
Maria Ioannou is the Portfolio and Investor Relations Manager at Kinisis Ventures, where she works closely with early-stage technology companies and international investors. Her work sits at the intersection of Cyprus's startup ecosystem and global venture capital, supporting founders as they scale beyond the island. Maria, welcome to the Future Makers podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Of course. I always start these conversations with a quote from Kierkegaard. So he says, we understand life backwards, but live it forwards. Thinking about your early life, how does that quote apply to your own experience?
I think I was always a why child, if I could say that, but not in the sense of why is this like that and why is that the other way. I remember always being around my dad or my uncle or my grandfather whenever they would be fixing something in the house. And I would go like, but why do you do it like that? And why do you do it? And why do you feel the need to do it? It was more about understanding them as humans and more about the how do you actually fix the pipe kind of thing. Whether I learned a thing or two about pipes and plumbing, sure. But I think it was more about I never really felt like I quite fit in. I always felt a little bit misunderstood. And by trying to understand how others operated, I think I was trying to see whether, this is what I would feel more comfortable doing, or maybe this is who I could be. And I kind of developed into this person that really tries to articulate herself in a very clear way so that others would also understand me the way that I try to understand them. And that would kind of give me the sense of belonging that I always wanted. And I found myself on this career path where communications and this sort of connecting and building bridges between people or of different sectors or of different industries is where I felt the most comfortable. So here we are, I guess.
So what was the kind of environment and the kind of script that environment was writing for you in that early life, especially you know, as a woman? Was there a specific career your family or maybe the educational environment was kind of nudging you along, or was it a little more open?
I think I was lucky enough to grow up in a family where there was no one specific script. If anything, they wanted me to try everything. I had the freedom to try whatever I wanted, but not specifically. But on the other hand, though, they would never tell me, why don't you try this or why don't you try that? There was never maybe you would like this. It was more like you come up with your own ideas and we'll get you there. And if you like it, you can try it. Now, I grew up as the younger sister of an older brother who'd like to do very boy things, so like karate or other boy sports like football, and I would always find myself trying to copy my brother and going those sort of things up until the age of 12. But career-wise, I was never nudged or made to think that you should be following this or that. If anything, I would say they wanted me to get into a career or a job that would be the most stable. They wanted to protect me in a way by making sure that whatever I would choose would have me set for life. Now, my parents met when they were 13 or 14 because they went to the same private school, and it was the same private school that my brother went to. So when it was my turn to apply and take the exams, I started the first semester. And as soon as I took the first exams, just, to see where each student from the group was at, and I realized that I was among the top 3. And I was like, okay, so if I wanted to, I could get in, but I don't want to. And I think I kind of broke my mom's heart when I decided to, guys, I'm not going to follow what you guys did. I'm just going to do whatever feels good or fun or whatever I want. Yeah. Whether that was good or bad, I don't know. But it landed me to where I am today. And
nice. So can we talk about like the physical space you were growing up in, and maybe how that affected some of your choices?
The physical space, as in the house I grew up in, or the school I went to?
Because you grew up in Cyprus.
Yes, I did. Correct. Sorry, yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about how that kind of environment played a role.
I think I grew up feeling quite safe, and it allowed me to want to try things. It allowed me to want to explore things. What it did not really build into me is the amount of options or opportunities there are out there. So if everyone around me was like, I'm going to be an accountant, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a doctor, and none of those things just like triggered anything in me. But at the same time, I wasn't listening to somebody saying, I'm going to go and create a company. I'm going to work for myself. I never heard that growing up. So it never even occurred to me. And although I had the freedom to try everything, at the same time, I wasn't really exposed to there are endless possibilities, or there are so many different paths you could choose to do where that would make you fit in most. And I think that's why in the end, when I was 17 and a half, when they ask a child, like, what do you want to go and study? At least that's where the timeline was for me. I was like, okay, I am smart, but I'm lazy. So what comes easily to me? Let me go and do that, because I could never even think that, maybe working in marketing would be fun for me. And where could that take me, or exploring innovation? So yes, I had the freedom, but I was not really exposed to what was available.
Yeah. And what did you go and pursue?
I pursued English language and linguistics because at the time, the family business was a couple of different locations of private institutes. And okay, it was a profitable business. But then as soon as I went to study, and the first 3 or 4 months in the year, I remember calling my mom and I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a teacher. I really don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And again, she was shocked because, again, she tried something and she just changed her mind. But one way or another, following that path, and it got me here because mastering the language allowed me to better break down more complex situations or scenarios in a way that other people would understand them. So I think that's one of the strongest points about me.
You've mentioned your mother. So who were the women that you were seeing in your life as you were growing up? Who were these mentors?
Okay, so growing up, I was actually surrounded by a lot more women than men. So I grew up in a very Cypriot kind of like family, which means that everybody lived very close together. So I had my mom, who had 2 older sisters that were always, they seemed to me growing up so powerful and confident. And one of her sisters had 3 daughters that were closer to my age. So they were like cousins, but sisters. And I always had this idea that women are strong, like women are confident, they're the ones running the show here, because the men would, okay, obviously they would stick to each other, like we need to protect ourselves from these ladies, but they seem to be very strong. And I grew up thinking that this is how it should be. That's just women are strong, end of. And when I later got into sports, I got into horse riding. Finally, I found something that I really liked and I wanted to stick to. It was also a women-dominated sport. So I just grew up thinking that women are strong and capable and resilient, and they run the show. There was a big shock when I actually got into the society and I actually got my first job, but that's what I grew up thinking.
Nice. And let's talk about that first job. What was your first job and what did it teach you about power, especially when it comes to women and women's position within that dynamic?
Whether it was right or wrong. So my first job was in sales. And it was a relatively small company. It was based in Cyprus, but it did like B2B business worldwide, mostly the US or Middle East and a little bit in Europe. But being a small business, it was mainly comprised of men. I think that the sales department only had like 2 girls and that was it. And I got into sales, and actually my first boss was my first mentor. So I was mentored by a man who was very, very confident. And he taught me that, in sales, you need to be confident. You need to have a little bit of a distance from everyone else, because that also increases the value of the product that you want to sell. Because if you hold yourself in a certain way, it will be easier for you to sell. So he kind of built in that confidence in me that regardless if you're young and regardless if you're a girl, you can actually get people to want to talk to you because you have whatever product at the best price. Obviously, that makes it easier. But again, that was instilled into me. So I wouldn't say that my first job was where it really hit me that, this isn't the real world. I was still quite protected. It was when I got to my second job, which was a much larger organization, and men and women in all levels. So it wasn't so much about women being on the lower ranks or men being on the higher ranks. But I just realized that, I entered that organization with so much confidence and thinking that, I know what I'm doing and I'm good at what I'm doing. And then you realize that not everybody goes to work and works on the same team as an adult. People bring their own emotions and their own insecurities and their own problems to work, and my ego and my confidence got a really big hit in those first years in that organization.
Who were you seeing in senior levels in that organization, and what was it that you were actually seeing that pushed you to take a step back?
Well, if we're talking about if I was saying men or women, there was a healthy mix. I think because the structure required it to be so. I, in general, don't like to think about men and women. I like to look at them as humans, because I've had mentors that were men, and I've worked for and with women that I respect and I looked up to for specific things that they did. And I would always say, I love how you balance that, and I love how tactful you are, and I like how you handle that situation. But at the end of the day, it comes down to people, and people, regardless of whether they're men or women, their insecurities or their own ego, I would say, would get in the way. And when you realize that as a young person wanting to grow and learn, not everybody's gonna care. Not everybody's gonna, want to see you grow. People still want to see they want to be the ones sitting in the big chair. So they have no trouble like letting you take the fall for something, or throwing you under the bus. That's a big hit when you realize that not everybody has the best intentions.
Yeah, of course. So in that role, you were still within like the communication and marketing kind of sector.
Yes. I was always part of the sales communication. At some point, I went into events for a little bit, but I think sales and marketing and business development in general were the key things.
What were you hoping to kind of grow into, I guess? What were you hoping to kind of achieve within the sector?
I think it was more about a feeling. Like I would just wake up one day magically and say, I know what I'm doing and I am so good at it and it's working. Whether I would see it in the numbers or whether I would see it in people's appreciation of my work. But that it doesn't really come, and it's not that often that you would work with people that, they would be able to appreciate the effort that you make. Usually what I've realized is that people are more happy to say that, it was her fault, or it's okay, we'll get someone else after she's gone and they will do a better job. And I kind of understood that it's more about if I feel good enough and if I know that I've done my best, nothing else of what anybody thinks or what anybody will say after I'm gone will actually matter. Because you can't really beat the system. If the system is set in a certain way, no matter what you do, whether you do backflips, it just won't matter. And it's okay.
I kind of want to getting a little bit deeper into what you're kind of touching upon, failure. How would you define failure then?
To me right now, at the ripe age of 32, I would say failure is staying in an environment that does not appreciate you and makes you feel like you are not good enough. That is my biggest failure. Staying too long in a place that kind of dimmed my light or kind of wanted to instill in me that you're not really going to go anywhere. That was my biggest failure. And learning to remove yourself from those situations faster, or learning to know when it's time to go. It doesn't even have to be that bad. Learning to listen to when you stop learning, when you stop being interested, and when you feel like, this is my limit. I really have nothing else to give. Maybe somebody else would actually do a better job here because they would want it more, or they would know a few things more than me. That is also a good thing.
You've transitioned now out of more of the marketing and communication space now into more venture capitalist environment. How did that shift occur? Was it always something you were passionate about, or where did that decision come from?
Luck plays a huge role. And I will never stop saying this to everyone, to founders and entrepreneurs as well. We discount how much luck plays a factor, because I was working at a place and I happened to meet a person who had invested in said companies and was like, you know what? I think you would be a good fit to work in these companies in the marketing or sales department. And then one thing leads to another, and I kind of made my way through from sales of B2B products that already existed in the market to academia, to working with startups that were actually creating something innovative and a new product in the market. And then I ended up in the side of the investor. Yes, it takes courage to move from sector to sector, and I'll give that to myself, but luck and timing and, meeting the right people at the right time, it really makes all the difference.
Yeah. I want to read a statistic that I was looking at just a week ago. It's from Level 20's 2024 European Gender Diversity Report. And they were looking at just the various investment professionals from all levels and comparing like the gender numbers across each company. And this was done across 13 European countries. And what they found, these are estimates, of course. So they were saying it's about women were around 28 to 30% of the full work of the workforce sample, and men the rest 72%. So that's around 873 women versus 2,246 men. And then we have women claiming around 38% of the junior roles, and then or 33% of mid-level roles, and only 19 of senior investment roles. What is the environment you are working in, or what environments within the in the investment, especially in the venture firm environment, are you seeing?
I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I was just when you started telling me about the statistics, I remembered the first time I went to a conference with my new job, and I walked into the room and I was like, is this like a men's only event?
Am I in the wrong room?
Am I in the wrong room? Okay, yes, it was a bit of a shock. And it seems to be more male dominant as a sector. And I've attended events so many years throughout my work, but I've never really kind of felt, okay, we're a minority here. So that was a bit of a shock for me. And also, one of the latest team meetings that we had, because our team is cut across the US and Cyprus. So we had a team strategic meeting with a couple of our very good partners as well. And I was the only woman in the room with 7 or 8 men. And yes, I was the only one. It would have been nice to be one of many, sure. Yeah. But at the same time, I have been lucky enough to work with people that happen to be men, but they never made me feel like I should be something or do something just because I'm a woman. Like, even if we're in the meeting, who will take notes? It has nothing to do with Maria, because you're the girl. Nobody does that. Everybody takes notes. And if anything, they want me to talk more. They want me to have that confidence more. And they're pushing me. Like, my boss would always push me on the deep end. He's like, go. Take the learning wheels off. Go, you can do it. You're much better than most of the men in the room anyway, so just go and do it. But in all honesty, I think I'm just lucky because I know that the other women in such situations were not as lucky. But my experience has been positive, even though I have been the only woman in the room. Hopefully, soon enough, but I will be one of many, but yes, it is a bit of a shocking situation to find yourself in.
Did you know that there were so few women before in the space before you accepted the job?
I did, but I never stopped to think about it.
Yeah,
it wasn't something. I mean, the team is small. We're a boutique fund by design, and I think the only time I started to realize it is whenever we have to do a presentation, and then you put all the experts and then you put the team, and I turn to the rest of the team. I'm like, guys, we need more women. They will really chastise this. Give me all the women experts and I'll put them in the front.
Yeah.
But nobody stops to think about it because maybe because they're men and they never had to think about it. I don't know. Or just because they don't really see the difference. They see minds, they see personalities. And I truly feel that. And that's why I never felt like I was an outsider or I was treated differently.
Why do you think women are not walking into the spaces, or why do you think there are so few women in that space, especially in Cyprus? I know you're working for a firm that works within a global sector, or has global companies within their portfolio, but I'm curious to hear about the Cypriot context.
I will tell you my personal opinion. Maybe it's way off. I think this is a sector that in general it takes courage, and it's quite a risky sector. And I don't know if a lot of people, and I wouldn't especially say specifically women, have that appetite for the risk because, nothing is set in stone. If the fund, kind of closes, then I'm out of a job and I would have to look for something else. Not everybody has the appetite for that. And I think maybe a lot of people have or come from a financial background. And usually when somebody takes that route, they like to stay in the bigger, more structured organizations where the path to C level is more clear. But I was never that person. So I don't know if it has to do with risk appetite or actual opportunities. I mean, we are a small market, so there are only so many venture capital firms here. But if we're looking at the founders themselves as well, yes, again, we have a minority in women, but I think it has to do more with the appetite for risk and for women, in my opinion, tend to want to pursue something that they actually find value and meaning behind. So the actual women, female founders that I've met are very passionate about the problem they're trying to solve. They build their whole life around it, and I admire it. But the men are more like, okay, I have a great idea. I think this idea is going to make me a lot of money, and let's go and do it.
Yeah.
But the women I've met, they're really passionate about the problem they're solving.
Do you think you have an appetite for risk then?
Yes, calculated risk, albeit, because I don't see myself ever being an entrepreneur. I mean, I've worked with them, I've worked for them. I have so much respect for them. The emotional resilience that it takes to wake up every day and motivate yourself, and no matter the highs or the lows, just be there and turn up every day. I'm not sure if I have that in me, but I would always take the calculated risk of going in a place that I don't know much about because I want to learn. If I feel like there's this or someone has something to teach me, I'm going to go, and I'm not going to think a lot on it. I'm not going to think 2, 3 or 5 times. If it goes well, it goes well. If it doesn't, I'll find something else. But that's as far as I go with risk taking, I think.
We've talked a little bit about failure, but I want to now go in like the opposite direction and just hear your thoughts on success. How would you define success? You know, especially kind of looking at your life. Is success only limited to career, or do other factors have to play in order for you to consider yourself successful?
This is something that I'm really navigating and trying to figure out for myself right now, because the older I get, the more things I feel like are in play. Now, success for me in the beginning used to amount to the amount of money I would have and the amount of things I could buy, or the kind of things I could be able to do. But now success is counted in how well do I sleep at night? Am I happy to work with these people? Do I feel like I made a difference? Do I feel like I have a good work-life balance? Obviously, I was never the kind of person that thought that a successful woman should have it all. Like, she should be the great mother, and she should be the great wife, and she should also be this great entrepreneur or this great C-level executive. But I don't think that exists. I don't think balance exists. Something that you're passionate about and you're going to be really successful in, and balance is everything. And I wouldn't say that in order to be successful, I would have to be good at everything. But if I wake up one day and I say, you know what, I'm really good at this, and it makes me happy and I'm interested and I still want to go after so many years, then that's when I'll feel successful. But again, as human nature, we keep moving the pole of what success is. So maybe in 5 years, I'll want something completely different or push the barrier further. But for now, I think this is what it means for me.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned motherhood, I just want to ask, can a woman work in a professional setting, try to pursue success, and yet still be able to have, I don't want to say a successful personal life, but, you know, pursue motherhood, pursue other ambitions that are more traditional? And I'm using quotations.
No, that's okay. Look, I can only tell you from like a perspective, like the observers kind of thing, because I am not a mother myself. I haven't pursued it, at least yet. So I can only tell you from what I see from my friends. I've actually made two very, very good friends of mine that used to, just be colleagues. And actually, one of my closest friends gave birth yesterday. And she's somebody that I really admire, especially when it comes to work and the career that she's had. And I remember us discussing that, the project baby is going to take priority now. And it's okay for me to, turn it down a notch at work so that I can concentrate on this. And this is not a woman that grew up thinking that my sole purpose in life is to have children, but this is somebody that had to really teach herself that, it's okay to deprioritize work for a bit because something else will take priority. So that's what I mean when I say if something is important, it will just off-balance everything. You can't be great at the same time, and you shouldn't even try. It's impossible. Nobody can do everything at the same time. But of course, as you grow and your life changes, you can turn down a notch here and, put more effort here. And then when you're ready, because it also depends on the person, when you're ready, you can go full force again, if that is what you want.
I feel as a society, there is still that pressure for women to pursue motherhood. And are you hearing this struggle within the female founders you have had conversations with?
Well, the thing is, most of the female founders I know have already become mothers. Their children are already 6 or 7, 8, 12 years old. So they've already gone past that. So it's not even a topic of conversation anymore for them because they've been there, done that, moved on. But I guess it will always be a part of society asking you so when are you going to have children, or do you want to have children? And it's always a question, even between two women discussing it. If it was two men here, it would not even be a matter of discussion. But it is what it is. If I'm the one that has to create the life and step back from a few key things that made me who I was, because a lot of people take meaning from their work. And there's so much of a personality shift and change when you have to cut the pie of who you are and add one more layer because now you're a mother as well. Things will change. And if you're the kind of person that listens to what society says, you will always be, drawn to have the first child, and then when are you going to have the second child, and when you're going to have the third child or whatever. But I don't think I grew up thinking or feeling or having it instilled in me that I should do or not do something. So that was not my experience.
Have you heard or experienced any conversations within the venture capital space where female founders, if they do have children, it kind of plays on the decision for their companies to get funded? No.
At least the tables that I have sat at, not at all. And if anything, yesterday I was part of a conversation where someone turned around and said, do you know this woman? But he meant it as in the professional setting. And he was like, you know what? I really like her. If there was a possibility, I was going to ask her to be my partner in building something. And then the next sentence was, do you know that if she were a man, she would have already had that title or that position? And he meant it in the sense that this is a brilliant person, but because she's a woman, she has learned to downplay how great she is and her expertise and her mind, that, she's much better than most of the men here. But if she were a man and she had that, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but take shit from nobody kind of mentality, she would have already been in XYZ position. And it made me think, yes, I'm surrounded by men that see the value regardless of the gender, but they know that, we downplay ourselves. We do. Yeah. It's like we're trying to shrink ourselves to fit in or be more palatable. But they're like, dude, you're brilliant. You're much more brilliant than most of the people running the show. You should be running the show.
Why do you think we do that?
I don't know, but it's something that I've been asking myself. If the two mentors that I've had in my career were men, and both of them had this take no shit from nobody mentality, and none of the women around me that I even, respect and admire have that or taught me that per se in words. Maybe they've done it in the way that they operate, and maybe that's what I admire. But I have never had a woman turn around and tell me, don't take shit from anybody. I've never had that. And I've been asking myself, why do we do that? I don't know. I guess we're kind of still programmed up to a level to be and act a certain way.
I want to talk about values. What values are important to you, and what values do you live by?
It's a couple of things, and I don't know if they quite count as values at this moment, but I'm a person that will always check in with myself first to see, let's say something happens and somebody who's gonna criticize something I did or something I said, my work or whatever, or they will say, I have a problem with you. The first thing I will do is really scan inside my head and see, where did I go wrong? Not have I done wrong, because I've definitely done something wrong. That is the first thing that goes into my head. And I'm like, make sure that you can identify exactly what you did wrong, and make sure you have the courage to apologize for it. And always, always make sure that you check yourself. You will never know everything about everything. There is always somebody that's going to know more. So learn to be quiet when you have to be. Learn to observe, and learn to take a moment before you reply. And what has really helped me is empathy, I guess, because empathy allows me to not take things personally anymore, up to a point, because I'm also human. But when something happens and somebody says something to me or says it in a certain way, the first thing that you feel is like, that ego kind of, why did you say that? Or I'm mad at you. But then you realize that, they're also a different person. Maybe they've had a bad day, and maybe they never had somebody teach them something different. So empathy allows me to hold less anger and less resentment, and be able to move on with my life more.
Nice. How do those values play out in the work that you do?
I think it has more to do, so specifically now in the VC world, yes, understanding technological complexity is very important, but you have to be able to understand the humans behind the idea, so the founders, the team. I think that my ability to want to and really be curious about the nature of the people behind the idea and understand their vision is what allows me to do a better job at supporting them in whatever way, whether that is just being on a call and listening to this problem and really listening, witnessing their struggle and making sure that, you're not alone. We're here. Or whenever we would have an intro call and you have to, get that feel of the team as well. Those are the skills that I think make me more unique at what I do. And that's where you will see my empathy and my curiosity for the human nature come more at play. And of course the check yourself part. I am talking to people that have spent their entire lives building something. Obviously these people know something more about that specific thing than me. So I am the last person you will see pretending to be a know-it-all.
How much does vulnerability then play in those conversations? Is there space for the founders to be vulnerable, or should they check themselves more?
I hope they one day have the ability to be more vulnerable because, when I was part of a team in a startup, the founder doesn't really have that ability to be that vulnerable with their team. I don't think they should be, at least, because the leader heavy lies the crown. You can't really let your team know if the company's struggling, or if this went bad or this went wrong. You're supposed to be the strong one. You're supposed to be XYZ. But if you find rooms that allow you to really say, you know what, I can't sleep, I am so anxious, or this went wrong or that went wrong, they need that. I hope that they have enough space to be vulnerable, to say that, okay, this is my limit of being the best at doing this. Maybe I should hire someone else to do this for me. Because also being vulnerable enough to understand where your limits are is, in my opinion, what's going to take you a step further as well. Because just because you're the founder doesn't mean that you are also a great salesperson, that you are also the best marketeer. You don't have to be. One person doesn't have to be everything. While the company scales, obviously, not right at the beginning, but being vulnerable enough to understand your limits is, I think, one of the strongest things that a founder could have.
Thinking about your sector, what change do you want to see in Cyprus and beyond?
So one of the things that I've noticed is that we've definitely shifted the mentality of building something for the local market to I'm building something from the beginning to apply to the international market. So definitely this confidence and this ambition has shifted, and I love it. And I would love to see more of it. At the same time, I would like to see actual change in the things that we discuss about. I would like to attend events that do not repeat the same thing over and over and over. I would like to see teams that are pitching at events and, they're a lot more confident than before. They need flying hours. We need to create this space for the founders and the teams to be able to have more exposure so that they become more confident. Because unfortunately, until now, when we're having a meeting with a company that's based somewhere in Europe or somewhere in the US for an introductory call, the confidence is just, you cannot compare. And it's a pity because we have some very, very smart people here, like geniuses. And just because of exposure or like flying time, as I like to say it, they don't have the same amount of confidence. It's just a pity because it's not the actual mind and the genius and the technology that is lacking. It's the exposure. So that's what I would want to see. I would want to see change in more ambition and providing our founders a place where they can actually learn how to be more confident by doing more.
And you mentioned discussions. What discussions do you think we should be having more, if not and what discussions are being repeated?
I think I like to be in rooms where we're not discussing what is the problem. Because the last few events that I've been attending, they're more about what do you think is going wrong and how do you think we could fix it? That is not so much, okay, so we said this is wrong and maybe we could do this. Okay, so what? I want to attend events where we're actually discussing how to apply the change. Instead of just going like, so where do you see the market going? AI. Okay, tell me something more. Tell me something that would teach me something. Take me to a room that will explain to me that, the future probably says that this agent will buy from this agent. So there is no human factor involved. So teach me how to build a company foundation that, prepares me for that change, whether that's like 20, 30, 40, maybe 5 years from now. That's what I want. I want somebody that, actually has an opinion and kind of like a prediction. And they're like, this is what I think is going to happen. And let's have a serious conversation about how do we actually get there. This is what I want, what I would like to see at least.
How far do you think we are from there? are those conversations happening, or do you think it's people are just more comfortable having repeating?
I think they're happening in smaller rooms.
Yeah.
They're definitely happening though, because we have a lot of smart people. Even here on the small island, we have a lot of smart people. So they're definitely happening, but in smaller rooms. I think the way that we like to hold our events still is more about, having a certain speaker talk about more general things or more about themselves rather than actually teaching the founders. I think we're missing the point about why we're doing the event in the first place. If the event is to expose the teams or the founders to something, make them the center of attention. There's no need to bring other people. There's no need to have more panels or more discussions. Yes, okay, it's a great warm-up. You need a little bit. You can have it. Fine, but keep it short. Give the spotlight to whoever needs to be on the spotlight.
Yeah. I have one last question for you, and that question is for the young woman now, thinking about their future, thinking about the careers or the sectors that they want to move into, or maybe just thinking about, what their next steps are. What would be your message to them as they're making these big life choices?
Honestly, what I would want somebody to have told me.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to try. Even if you fail, you're failing forward. I mean, go for it. And unless you ask for something, that's when you're definitely not going to get it. And whatever difficulty comes your way, whether that's because you're young or because you're a woman or because you just happen to be in an environment where the opportunities are not there, that's probably gonna be the way you build more resilience. Just make sure that whatever happens to you moves you forward. Don't let it get you stuck there, because people don't generally spend a lot of time thinking about other people. Just take whatever happens, learn from it, move forward. Just keep moving. That's what I would have to say.
Beautiful. Maria, thank you so much. That was such an invigorating and very powerful last message as well. And I think this whole conversation was very positive and very hopeful.
Oh, I hope so, because I have been called a pessimist, but I think there's a lot of optimism in pessimism. So
I think so.
I think
if you're grounded in not even pessimism, but just realism, you can see the glimpses of, the skyline, even when the day is dark or gray or dim, which, we're not in London, so we can't really complain of grim days.
One of the reasons I would never leave Cyprus.
Oh my goodness.
So many days of sunlight.
Yeah.
So yes, look, it was a pleasure to be here. I hope that I had something of value to add, and that is always my main concern. Not to just open my mouth just to talk, but have something to say. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this. I really loved our conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.